Hello, everybody, and welcome into the large program Tigers Tonight. I'm your host, John Maddox. One of them who is sad tonight, and that would be Brian Moss, because he didn't get as much snow as he wanted and checks the calendar mid-March. Brian, what's wrong with you?
Oh man. Well, when someone promises you I don't know, what do they say? Yeah, what, actually, it was 8 to 16 inches, and you only get like 4 to 5.
Yeah,
That's
it's
what
a
she
real
said.
that's what she said moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's a letdown. I understand. I understand some people's pain
Yeah.
there.
Well, if you've been married for any length of time, you understand the letdown for sure. So, also, once again, this week still in the palatial Marley Manor here in beautiful, scenic, and well, not
Well, it's still crime free. I mean, it hasn't quite moved down this way yet. It's getting there. Yes, I am at home again, and that's actually will probably be home next week too. It's just been for me. It's the off season as well, and we talked last week about the spring, and for me traveling is more of a summer fall thing. And so this is and a lot of times, you guys, Chris, you guys know this, we don't do this show a lot this time of year, right? I mean, normally we used to take a break. So you guys are like shocked that I'm home, but you got to understand that this is normally the way it is. So yeah. So yeah, I'll
so it's good
probably
to
be
have you here in beautiful Hernando, Mississippi with us. And we're gonna mix it up a little bit. We talked a little bit off air about what we were going to talk about tonight, and I kind of threw a monkey wrench in everything last week when we did the better, or what would we call it, better, worse, same, or wait and see with the coaching staff.
right.
We kind of put off a couple other things. So tonight, what we're going to do is Brian has gone through and he has looked into his Carnac crystal ball, and he has made a two deep as we come into spring practice. Now, spring practice starts on Sunday. I believe that. All right. Yeah, Sunday. Um, and so they'll go for 15 total practices, which will, of course, conclude with Friday Night Lights on Friday, April 21st at 7 p.m. at Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium. Before we get into it, I would be very remiss if I did not mention mucho congratulations to the University of Memphis men's and women's basketball teams. Both made the postseason. Of course, the men are the number 8 seed. They're headed to Columbus, Ohio to take on the Florida Atlantic University Owls, who will actually be a conference opponent next year. But they will be taking on the Owls in that dreaded 8-9 game. Winner of that game will get Purdue. And the women made the women's NIT by virtue of winning 20 games this year. So that's how the women's NIT works. They have automatic qualifiers for anybody that wins more than 20. And so the women will host Jackson State Thursday night at 7 at the El Marone Fieldhouse. The men, I believe, tip at 8. It's either 8:10 or 8:20 on TNT. And who can forget, it's our favorite time of the year, where the most Googled question will certainly be, what channel is True TV on? This is the only time of year we worry about True TV. But luckily, Memphis is on TNT. All right, so let's get back and continue onward this month. All right, so Brian, where do you want to start? What position do you want to start with?
Well, just start from the top, quarterback. I mean, we all know, Hennigan's the starter, but maybe we could talk about what do we want to see him improve on? Tevin Carter there as a backup. Do you want to see Tevin Carter in games this year? So to me,
Yes.
yes and yes. But Hennigan, I want to see. It's not like he's not an accurate quarterback because he had 64%. But some of the throws, it seems like he rushed it. And maybe that's because, the offensive line wasn't doing a great job of protecting him. But I want to see him be a little bit more accurate, get up to that 68-ish range, 70%. But yeah, be a little bit more accurate on the run. I think his accuracy will improve as long as the offensive line improves. But I definitely want to see some Tevin Carter in there. I know Hennigan ran a lot last year, but let's save the running for Tevin Carter. I mean, this kid, he's a natural born runner. I mean, he throws the ball as well. But yeah, I just want to see more of Tevin built in, and maybe Wildcat, just something in there to throw some defensives off. Give the defense something to think about, because if you give them something to think about, they're not reacting. And I think that can only be a good thing for Memphis.
Yeah, and Larry and I talked about this pretty extensively last offseason, that, one of our problems we had, or one of my problems, was Seth was the same dude on the last day of the season before, of the 2021 season, that he was on the first, 64, 65% accuracy. He did add the running game a little bit this year. Just blessed that he didn't get injured this year a couple times when he just was running for his life. I think if I want to see anything out of Seth this year, it's a being more willing to kind of stand in and not be as quick to pull it down and take off. That goes back, and we'll get into the offensive line, of course, but that goes back to having some time, being protected up front. But, we've got to get Tevin. Memphis has to figure out how to get Tevin on the field at some point this year, because you can never have enough bodies. And Tevin gives you a completely different look. But the only thing you have to be careful of is Memphis is only carrying 3 quarterbacks.
Yep.
Like in years past, where you had 4 or 5 and a couple of wide receivers that could play. So, you're a couple of sprained ankles away from, no offense, love him, but from Patrick Byrne being your quarterback. For those who don't remember, that happened, oh gosh, what was Patrick's junior year? Like 3, was he here with Will Hudgens? Like 3 guys got hurt in front of him, and he was our punter and had to play quarterback. But Larry, I think that's something that we both talked about, right? Is we want to see what that next step with Seth Hennigan looks like.
And let me be very clear. I thought Seth grew over the course of the year. As the season progressed, I think we all sort of saw some progressions there. His ability to his command of the offense, and I think he grew a little more comfortable with some of the wide receivers. But the truth is that he didn't have the safety outlets that he had the year before. And John, what I saw, especially in the spring, I was concerned because what I saw was the same overthrows, the same, you mentioned he was, whenever he would get pressured, that's when we would see those overthrows. And we saw it in the course of the season. Now, as the season progressed, he did seem to get a little more stable. But yeah, guys, this may be, unless we see a big jump this year, which is not normal. The truth is, most of the time the jump is from the first year to the second year, right? You don't normally see a jump second to third year. You can, but it's normally the first to second year. Look, Seth may just be a 60% guy that throws for 3,600 yards. And, he may never be that guy that's going to throw for 5,000 yards in a season. And that just may be who he is.
And in this offense, that's probably okay.
Yes. I mean, he doesn't necessarily have to have, a Brady White 2019 season, right? He doesn't necessarily have to have a 2014 Paxton Lynch season, right? I mean, he doesn't necessarily have to have that.
I think he can be, as long as the offense gives him time. That's why I'm really interested in the offensive line this year, because I want to see I don't want to say the real, Seth Hennigan, but a Seth Hennigan that's not running for his life. Give him some time. Let's see what he can do. I think he can flourish in this system, giving some time.
Yeah, I think he is probably somewhere between a game manager and a kind of that 5,000, 6,000 yard guy every season. I think he's somewhere in here. And Ward brings up a great point. We dropped a ton of balls last year too. So what would his completion percentage have been if we would have caught everything? I tell you what, let's kind of flip the script a little bit. And Bryan, let's move to that offensive line. And because I think we all have been in agreement that that's the whole kit and caboodle this year is how well this offensive line performs. I mean, you've got Jacob Likes, who's a redshirt senior. It's time for some of this age to, and be a leader on that offensive line and say, we're not doing this anymore. Our quarterback is not going to run for his life anymore. We're going to be able to block for running backs too. So, Bryan, how does your two deep kind of look coming out of going into the spring?
Well, I know there's a lot of hype around Pounders. So left tackle, as of right now, I penciled him as my starting left tackle. He's 6'5", 290, but he started, I think, 2 games early last year, but didn't start again at all for the rest of the season. And when you take a look at some of his, Pro Football Focus numbers or his, Sports Source analytic numbers, it's not the greatest, but he's young. So I really want to see how he develops. But as of right now, I pencil him as a starter. Marcus Henderson, 6'5", 303. He can play guard or tackle. So where does he fit? Is he going to slide? Is he going to battle Pounders for left tackle? We'll see. Gamble, he started a lot, but he's another one that he hasn't progressed as much as I would have hoped for. Starters in the past, offensive line in the past,
Well, the center position is wide open, Bryan. That center position is wide open.
Well, Likes has been your center, and Alford has been your backup. Alford has started at guard,
right?
But I think every position is open. I don't think there's like set in stone that the coaching staff looked at this and was like, okay, this is definitely our starter. I think every position's open. But as of right now, I would have Pounders left tackle, Gamble as of right now, unless Henderson's battling right there for left guard. That's where I would have him. I still would have Likes at center because he's been your center, and I want to see him. I just want to see him progress a little bit.
The sheer number of bad snaps last year, guys, that's got to be a wide open position. I'm sorry.
No, yeah. Well, that's why you have the spring and fall camp. I'm saying what I'm saying here is just pre-camp. This is who I would have penciled in before camp starts, day one. So right guard, Davion Carter started some games, but your LSU transfer, Xavier Hill, 6'4", 318, I'd actually have him starting at right guard. And right tackle, I think, is a great spot for Chris Morris, the JUCO, 6'6", 275. But you also have Terrence McClain, who started some. But I would have Morris over McClain or Greer, the walk-on from Ole Miss. But he's one that he's one to look for to crack the 2 deep because he's grown some. He's 6'6", 275 now. So I want to see his development. But this offensive line, wide open.
Yeah, and it's transfer heavy in some ways, which you would expect when you need help. This is what the transfer portal is for. You've got 4 actually with Greer, 4 former SEC.
And kind of what we talked about, John. If you get recruited to the SEC, it's not an accident, right? You get recruited there, like you got to be able to play. Even a walk-on for an SEC team is really good. Like I don't know that they would start for a Memphis team, but as Bryan said, depending on development, they could definitely crack the 2 deep. And you see development from those guys. This again, we talked about the way the offensive line has progressed, and some of this, guys, is going to be, how does the new coach mesh with the existing players? What does he see? He may look at Likes and go, "No, you're not a center, son. Like you're a guard. Like you just are. Like it just is." I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm just giving you an example. I remember our offensive line coach retired after my sophomore year, and the new offensive line coach came in and went, "No, you're a tackle. You're not a guard. Like you're not fast enough. We need you over here." And it worked beautifully. Like a fresh set of eyes looking at these guys may be able to say, move things around. And Bryan, I think you're dead on that. One thing that could really assist the offensive line is some competition. Like, get some new guys in there and get some of these guys that are the red. We've got, and one of the things that we didn't mention here. Look at the level of experience that we have. Red shirt senior, red shirt junior, red shirt senior, red shirt junior, red shirt senior. I mean, just, and then all up and down, red shirt sophomores, red shirt juniors. I mean, these guys have 4-5 years experience coming in. You can't replace that. Now they have to play like it, right? That's what we want to see.
Yeah, you have to step up. 7 of the 17 offensive linemen Memphis have in the spring roster are transfers. Or 7 of the 19. Sorry, Memphis is carrying 19 offensive linemen. And of that, only 2 true freshmen. So, I think Breland is going to be really good. Another year in the weight room, but I know the staff is really high on Malachi Breland. They love his size, and what's not to love at 6'6" or 6'5", 340. That's a big.
Yeah, and there's just the offensive line efficiency over the last 3 years has dropped considerably. I mean, in 2020, they were ranked the 38th best unit, in offensive line efficiency. Last year, they were 82nd. I mean, that's a drop, and that's what needs to be fixed. And hopefully, the Coach Myers, last year for Iowa State, I think his offensive line efficiency was 73rd, but you go back a little bit, his offensive line efficiency in 2020 was 15th. So, his ability to mold an offensive line is there. I mean, at one time he had the 15th best offensive line in the nation. So we hope that, when he comes to here in Memphis in this spring camp, he can mold that offensive line because it's his offensive line. I mean, he wide open. Like I said, he definitely has the ability. We really want to see that offensive line come together.
Let's move to a Brian's kind of frozen, and now Larry, you're muted there.
Sorry.
Sorry, Larry. Let's move to tight end, because this is one Brian and I were talking about before we went on here. You lose Caden Priestcorn, John Hassel graduates, so you're going to have Anthony Lanphier played some, but to me, Brian, he's the guy coming out of camp because he's the guy that we've seen. You know what I mean? He's the guy that we've seen in the jersey, and we know that he knows the plays. So he's probably the guy. His strength is not catching the football, but we could have made the exact same argument, Brian, going in and said, "Oh, he's a run blocker."
Yeah, I mean, I know offensive line gets a lot of the talk, but the tight end position is truly one of the most underrated battles to watch, because Arrington McCray was highly sought after, coming out of high school. If I'm not mistaken, he was a high 3-star. I don't think he was a 4-star in Rivals, but definitely a 3-star. I mean, he had some legit offers. This kid, he's a good combo of a pass catching and run blocking, but I think he was injured last year, so I think that's why we didn't see him, that much. So to me, it's between Lanphier and Arrington McCray. This is a really, really good battle to watch, and Memphis needs one of these kids to step up, because in this offense, I think it relies so much on the tight end. And for this offense, you have to have a good tight end, and Memphis has had that for 6-7 years. They've relied on the tight end position. There was no question marks really for the past 6-7 years, and this year it's coming in. It's a question mark, and so you really want to see someone step up, in this role, because to me it's vital for this offense.
I will just add that Flanagan, I saw him up close and personal because he's from Hernando, and I saw him play in high school. And I can tell you he's got a good set of hands on him. That was the quarterback is actually at Southern Miss, and Flanagan was, that was all he had. Like, if Flanagan wasn't open, he was in trouble. And so Flanagan can catch the football. I don't know. there's a lot more to catching to playing tight end than catching the football, guys. And one of those is run blocking. Like that's critical because we're going to talk about that in a second when we talk to the running backs. And one of the things that we did see progress over the years, and one of the things that Lampier did do last year was do a good job run blocking, especially later in the season. Because we talked about that in one of the shows, how he had stepped up and started to really develop as a run blocker. And he's got the size, 6'4", 235. But all these guys are basically around the same size, right? I mean, they're all 6'3", 6'4", 240. And that's a great even the kid they brought in from junior college, Doyle. And I know absolutely nothing about him other than he's a transfer in. So I think you guys nailed it. That we've talked about how the offensive battle, it may be the most important to the team, but this battle may be the most interesting in the spring. Don't you agree? Muted, brother.
Yeah, thanks. Doyle and Lanphier both went to college at San Mateo. Lanphier is a year ahead, but I'm looking down this roster, and Memphis has Chisholm, who's 6'2", 260, played at Hutchinson in Kansas, and then right below that is Billy Crookston, 6'5", 262. I'm thinking when those guys are in the game, they're probably run blocking. I don't know many 262-pound dudes that have hands, but I do think that it is going to be the most interesting battle this year because I think the tight end is a very important piece to the Memphis offense. All right, let's move to the wide receiver. Oh, go ahead.
It may be just like the running backs position in the past couple of years. It may be a tight end by committee this year.
Yeah.
If no one steps up, that's what you got to do.
Not just that, but if like this guy run blocks better than the other guys, but this guy's got better hands, then it's 3rd and 9. We're bringing the blocker out. We got to put the guy who can catch in. So let's move kind of out from the tight ends, and we'll close with the running backs. Let's talk about wide receiver because to me, this is the group that I have the most doubt and the most quality this year. I have a lot of doubts, but I have the most hope at the same time that if this group plays well, Memphis has a chance to be really good if these guys can play well and can just figure out how to hold on to the dang football.
Yes. My 2 deep. I mean, this is going to be I 2 of the 3 receivers that are going to be on the field for me. I want some size. So Joe Skates, 6'2", Rock Taylor 6'3". That's who I want out there on the edges. And then I have Demir Blankumsey. When I look up some analytics, the most efficient wide receiver of the bunch will be Blankumsey. He has 55.7% efficiency rating according to SportSource. He doesn't have very many drops at all, which is a great thing. We all know, I think Skates had 6 drop passes, if I'm not mistaken, last season. So you really need to see him step up and not, drop the ball so much. But yeah, for my 3, I have Skates, Taylor, Blankumsey. Now, Dove is 6'2". I think he's going to be important. So if Skates continues to drop the ball and the coaches can't trust him, I'd move Dove right into that spot. But look for Dustin Thomas. He's a 6 foot. The coaches were highly on him coming out of high school, and I think in Cleveland. And Kobe Drake. He didn't play a lot, but when you take a look at his stats, he had phenomenal stats as far as efficiency. He didn't have a lot of drops. So watch for him to sneak in there and that 3rd wide receiver or that slot receiver.
Is this going to be the year Rock Taylor steps up? Because we've been waiting for it, right?
Man, what was it? 4-star coming out of high schools? I mean,
Right.
you're
And look,
waiting for
we
it. Yes.
were when his freshman year, we were talking about him basically being on the field that year. It never happened, right? He never ever sort of became that guy. But and last year we talked about it again. Like, okay, is Rock gonna because he's got all the physical gifts you could want. I mean, he gets separation. He runs decent routes when you watch. The
Now,
problem has been efficient. It has been consistency, being consistent, and because what your quarterback needs to know is where you going to be at a given time, right? And
yep.
and that's been an issue. He hasn't been consistent in his route running. He hasn't been consistently good. Man, he's got it for me and with him. It's all about building rapport with your quarterback, but being consistent, running the
Could,
route that you're
could
asking.
the could the inconsistency be because of I guess the amount or lack thereof that he was given? I mean, there was players ahead of him. I know the
I
wide
mean,
receiver. There's a new wide receiver coach this year for a reason.
yeah,
And was
understood.
he really yeah, so my question is, was he really given the opportunity to excel?
I think the problem was, I think twofold. First of all, I don't think they ever settled on a position for him. Whether whether he was in the slot or was he on the outside, and I think that was problem number one because we would see him lined up in both, and look, you are going to be lined up in both, but you have to have a position, right? I mean, and they need to run plays specifically for him. And I think that was the other issue. But here's the bottom line. He's got to show it in practice, guys. He's got to be able to create and generate separation from your defensive backs. And that was an issue all last year for a lot of our wide receivers, but particular for Rock. And the Kobe Drake, he's the one guy on that roster that you could go, oh, damn, how did he get back there? I mean, and he's that one dude that they all have speed, but he's got that extra gear that you watch. I mean, he really has that gear. So it would not surprise me in the least to see Kobe break that too deep. I mean, I could definitely see that.
I can solve the whole where's Rock Taylor at. He's a slot. There, solved, done. Because he's a big guy, he can get inside, he can get inside you, and that's how he gets
Inside
separation.
leverage. Yep.
He's the biggest wide receiver. He's 6'3", 215 pounds. Skates is 6'2", 210, but Skates has probably got a little more speed than Taylor does. Yep. So you need Skates on the outside. But I'm just looking down. You look at this roster, and it seems like we've had this conversation about 2 or 3 different guys. Rock Taylor, Kobe Drake. When are they going to finally, like, when's that light going to come on? Because I think that's what has to happen for guys. But
it doesn't for everybody. That's the bottom line. Like, but it doesn't.
But Taylor's been misused. I mean, that would be my thing. Is like,
agreed.
You have to let a guy like that. What do the kids say? You got to let Rock Taylor cook. Like that. That's what you have to do. You have to just kind of let him. And Larry, I think it was you that said you've got to run plays for him. You've got to run that little tunnel screen. He's probably not a big end around guy, but you've got to get the ball in his hands in space. That's one of the things Memphis has struggled with without Calvin Austin. Calvin Austin, if you got him ball in space, it's night time. Somebody's out, like it's over. And we just haven't figured out how to get anybody else the ball in space this year.
Well, and they haven't generated the space. That's part of it. I mean, Calvin would just run away from people, but
you can design plays
100%
to create space.
Absolutely. You're right. And he is the one guy that has the size and the speed combination to really give your safeties trouble. Like, keep them up at night going, okay, how are we going to keep him from getting, inside leverage on us? Especially without Eddie Lewis. I mean, now it's wide open, right? He's got the middle of the field all to himself. And I guys, this has got to me the Rock Taylor skates, and whether it's Dove or whether it's the kid they brought in. I'm sorry. Yeah, right. Either one of those, whoever it is there, I mean, that's got to be, and all of them are going to have to play. And so I think you're right, John. I really want to see this is why we're talking about this in the spring. I would love to see one of these guys really separate themselves in the spring. I really would, right? And just sort of be the leader of that in that room, because they really haven't had that since Calvin.
Bryan, did Dove play with Seth? Because they went to the same school, but Dove's a fifth year and Seth is a junior.
I
would assume they would have at least crossed paths, right?
If I'm not mistaken, without looking, I think Dove was a senior when Hennigan was a freshman, if I'm not mistaken.
So there's
familiarity there.
There's some familiarity there. And I think, that breeds one of two things. One of them is contempt and the other one is good. Hopefully it's the latter and not the former on the football field. All right, so let's move now. We'll close tonight with the running back position, which has been a very frustrating one for Memphis, especially for Bryan and I, who have banged our heads against the tables many times and saying, and I'm not picking on him, but saying, why is Brandon Thomas getting fill in the blanks carries? Why? But I don't know this year. Brandon's had some injury issues. He's frankly, for being real, he doesn't strike me as a guy that really wants to keep playing that much. I think he's comfortable in his role now. But you've got Sutton Smith, who had a flashes last year. The guy I'm most high on is Blake Watson, the transfer in from Old Dominion, but he's a little guy.
Right. But Ducker looked good. He was probably, you guys think he was the most consistent?
I think Sutton was. Yeah. I think Sutton was. Because when you handed the ball to Sutton, good things happened. Ducker's one of those guys that it's, 2 yards, lose a yard, 3 yards, 27 yards. He doesn't quite have that speed to just run away from everybody. But he's kind of
he's got good vision, right? He's got good vision.
That is something, Bryan, that as we look at your two deep here, that's something that the Memphis running backs have to do a better job of. I know we maligned the Memphis offensive line last year, and with pretty dang good reason. But if you're a running back, one of your responsibilities is if when your offensive line isn't playing well, if this play is to go into the A gap, you better hit the A ever hit. And I think Memphis backs like Seth last year got a little gun shy. So how do you see the running back shaking out? Who do you think is going to step up?
This is mine. If I was the coaching staff, my starter would be Sutton Smith. I think he's the most dynamic running back that on the Memphis roster. He's the most Darrell Henderson-esque that I've seen on the Memphis roster last year. I would have Ducker at number 2. I love his instinct. I wouldn't have him obviously every down because I think Sutton Smith would have the bulk of the carries. But 3, as a change of pace, I'd put Blake Watson in. So Watson and Ducker to me are interchangeable, but your main guy, if Memphis has one, to me is Sutton Smith. I think you have to showcase his skills, and I don't think any running back not named Brandon Thomas was given the opportunity to be the number 1 guy. So, I know Thomas is on the roster. I don't know him personally. Never talked to him. I just want to see more of Sutton Smith. To me, I'm a results-based type of guy. The results on the field have shown Sutton Smith has produced more positive plays than anyone. Let's give him the ball. It's as simple as that to me.
Because we've done that for 2 years with Brandon. We've made Brandon the guy for 2 years, and through different things. Look, it happens.
Well, injuries and attrition, right? I mean, that's what happened.
The offensive line falls apart, and guys struggle with that. But I think I'm with Brian here. But another guy that's going to be interesting to see how they use is Contravian Hargrove, transferring from Mississippi State.
Mm-hmm.
He and Watts, especially, I think Hargrove. I think you're going to get, usually you get your kicking game coming from the wide receiver core as far as your returners. I think you've got a couple guys in here that could return some kicks. You've got a couple sure-handed guys. Ducker, very sure-handed. But I just think Watson, Hargrove, those guys, they're smaller. The roster has Ducker and Watson the same size, and I've seen them side by side, and they're not the same size.
Yeah.
So, as we look at this, though, it's very obvious that, if Memphis comes out, we're going to know if Memphis comes out and tries to run Brandon Thomas 20 times in the first 3 games. Like, we're going to know that we're not comfortable, because I think that's part of it too, right? Yeah, we talk about the coaches, but the players have to put themselves in a position to make the coaches comfortable with them. So, like Sutton Smith, when he was given an opportunity, he ran, pardon the pun, he took the ball and he ran with it. And other guys have kind of shied away from that when they've been given the spotlight. So I think this is a incredibly deep group. And Larry, does that hurt in some ways because there's only one football? So how do you keep everybody invested?
Well, and there's nobody outside of Brandon Thomas that's physically separated themselves. You know what I'm saying? There's no Derrick Henry's out there, although I know that's freaks of nature. But my point is, you look at them all, they're all basically the same size. There's nobody that's blazing fast, right? But so we talk about the intangibles at this point. Sutton Smith showed good vision. Sutton Smith showed a burst, right, to get to the hole. Ducker showed some big playability. But nobody showed that they've got it all last year. And so, to your point, John, having a deep roster is only a detriment if nobody steps up. Because, I mean, I remember the years that we had a deep roster with, Gibson and Henderson and Patrick Taylor. And, we had all of these guys, Kenny Gainwell, on the roster at the same time. And we weren't sitting here going, wow, having so many great football players is a problem. Right? The problem is nobody stepped up. Nobody separated themselves. So to your point, here's what I want to see. I want to see Sutton Smith get better at pass protection, because he had problems last year with it. I mean, when one of the things, when you're back there and you're there, you're the quarterback's personal protector, you better protect, because otherwise you can't be on the field in passing situations. You know what that means? That means the other team's going to know that we're throwing the football because you're not in the game. So those are the little things that I want to see these guys step up and do. I want a guy who can, run the football, show some vision, show some burst, and show some heart running the football, guys. Because I think, we had too many guys last year that were looking for a place to fall down. I'm just being honest with you.
But
and I'm
some
not,
of that, but to be fair to those guys, when you get knocked down 23 times behind the line of scrimmage because you don't have any blocking, number 24 is I'm making a business decision, and I get it. That's like when we had when Randy Fichtner was the offensive coordinator all those years ago. Like, I remember the Colts and the Titans interviewed him about, why do your wide receivers always run out of bounds? Well, they always run out of bounds so they don't have to get hit. Like, that's the name of the game, is not getting hit. And, so these running backs just kind of said, you know what, I can get 4 yards and take a hit and go down, then that's got to be good enough. But I think this year, Brian, it's almost like the tight end. It's a very interesting position.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the end of the day, it's going to have to be by committee, because everybody does. Nobody's great at anything.
Yep. And you have to keep kids happy. It's not like 2018, 2019 when you had 4 or 5, running backs, on your roster that's going to go in the NFL. Well, the transfer rule is not what it was. So you're going to have to keep some folks happy so they don't transfer. You know, I know the coaching staff, and I mean, it's not just Memphis. I know a lot of coaching staffs say, they want that one running back to step up, but they never give that one running back an opportunity. It's always been running back by committee. Ever since the transfer portal has happened, you've seen more and more schools do a running back by committee. And I mean, a lot of positions are by committee because of the transfer rule. You want to get folks some playing time, so that way to keep them, whet their appetite a little bit to keep them on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of my favorite John Madden stories, and I tell it all the time. But he said on a Monday Night Football broadcast one time, he was talking about Leroy Horde, who played for the Vikings for many years, and he said, Leroy's yards, you hand him the ball and you get 3 yards. Leroy's also a guy when it's 3rd and 7 and you need 7 yards, you hand him the ball and he gets 3 yards. Like he was making a joke, but there has to be something to that with consistency, right? Like you have to, as a coach, it's a double-sided thing here. You have to, as a coach, know that when I give Sutton Smith the ball inside the 10-yard line, it's 6. It's a touchdown. I don't have to have 4 plays called. I know that if it's 1st and goal at the 4, it's going in. But by the same token, Sutton Smith has to train is not the right word, Larry, but know the coaches that when you give me the ball, it's 6.
And show that you can do that. One of the things, like, show what you're good at. And we talked about this. You can't be a jack of all trades. That's not how this works. You have to have a niche and be good at it. And that's what gets you on the field. You are either a freak of nature and just the best player out there, or you find something that you're good at. And the problem that Bryan, you said it, the problem with our running backs is nobody's great at anything. And that's the problem. You've got to have somebody figure out what you're good at. If you're a good blocker, go and work on that. Work on, all right, I'm going to be a good blocker. That way, come 3rd down, if they need, and work on your pass catching out of the backfield. I'm a good blocker, so I can line up in pass situations, and I can, and I can be a good decoy. I can catch the ball out of the backfield. This is how I can help the team. This is how I can get on the field and play. Because being fair and just average, we got 6 of those guys. You got to be good at something. And right now, I think we can argue that our wide receivers have been misused. I think that one of the arguments I can make is that our running backs have not been pushed to specialize. They want them all to be the same. And to me, that's a mistake.
I want to see more innovation on the running backs too. I mean, if
Martin should have been a 3rd down back. Like he walks on the field and you go 3rd down back. I want you to block. I want you to catch the ball out of the backfield.
See, I couldn't disagree more.
I think he should have been. You think he should have been the feature runner? Okay,
well, and I think me and John have been on that.
Or if not the feature, the guy was immensely,
and maybe
spots, and it seemed like we would put him in like the whole East Carolina dot, like we put him in bad positions over and over again. When he showed you, I forget what game it was, he broke like 3 runs in a row and then came out of the game and didn't get back on the field. See, I see Asa's, he's not a feature. He wasn't a feature guy. See, that's where Sutton can be, because Sutton can be a feature guy.
Strength,
but Larry, you're dead on. He's got to get better protecting the pass, because you can be good. You can be, what's the word I'm looking for? You can be proficient. Like when I was in college and was going to be a band director, you had your instrument that you specialized in, but like I had to take cello proficiency and I had to take piano proficiency. I just had to be good enough to pass. Like I just had to not look.
Right. I mean, in pass blocking. Things. Well, and in pass blocking, he's got to be the guy that, at the very least, he can't be doing this Olay stuff, because we had that last year where he would be reaching and the guy's going around him, and basically he would have been better if he had fallen on the ground and the guy had to jump over him, because he might trip. I mean, literally.
Man, that's harsh. Man,
there were times that's not inaccurate.
That's
but
harsh.
What I want to see from any running back this year is just more innovation as far as, cut back, or if the hole or the gap that you're supposed to run, if it's not there, bounce back. You use your peripheral. I mean, look for other avenues. Maybe that's their coach not to do that, but I mean, Asa did it very well last year. He bounced out and got more yardage. But if something's not there, just don't continue to hit it and not go anywhere. To me, I want to see more bounce. I want to, honestly, for play calling, I want to see some more misdirection. I'm still hammering for more screen.
I can't tell you
too.
the last time Memphis ran a counter. I can't tell you the last time. I can count on one hand the number of times I saw a guard pull or a tackle pull. Like it's just straight ahead block. And you do that sometimes because you feel like the skill level or whatever isn't there to be more creative. But, at some point, pardon the pun, you got to crap or get off the pot. I mean, these are either your horses or they're not. And you just have to kind of ride into the sunset with them. All right. So I'll give you guys here just a few seconds before we go. But Bryan, who is one person that camp is going to be in spring that nobody is talking about right now that will get everybody's attention?
Oh, wow.
I'm going to pick I want to go offensive line, but I mean, there's not too many people are going to be, watch spring practice and be like, oh, that offensive line was great. That's always, it's always the skill positions. So, but I'm going to say Blankensee. I think he has a chance to be that, slot. I'm assuming that's where I would put him in that slot receiver. And I think he's going to shine this year. I really do. I like his skill set. I like what he does. He doesn't drop the ball, so that's always a plus. So to me, I think at the end of the spring, folks will be saying his name.
For me, it's Travion Hargrove. I mean, I've been on the Blake Watson train, but
you could be right.
In some ways is kind of the forgotten one here, the transfers. This is a kid, again, Larry, you say it all the time. If you got recruited to play at the SEC, it wasn't because it wasn't your dashing good looks or your amazing personality. I mean,
and he almost committed to Memphis coming out of high school. So, I mean, that's a good one.
Yeah, but I think Hargrove is a kid that I really think that, because it's kind of the thing of, okay, Watson's coming in, you got Sutton Smith, Brandon Thomas is coming back, you got Jay Ducker, like there's all these guys, and there's Hargrove that, could come out of nowhere and, potentially
be that future back.
I think he's going to be on the field. Now that may be in the kick return game, that may be other ways on special teams, but I think he's a guy you just have to have him on the field.
For me, it's Arrington McCray. He's a guy that the position's wide open. We need somebody. We talked about how the wide receivers were inconsistent getting separation. This is a kid that can catch the football. He's got the size. He's got the speed. I think he's going to show out. You're going to see him catch the football. Hennigan's going to really love having him as a safety valve coming out. And I just think that he played in 12 games last year. I think he played in a lot of games last year, I believe. I think you're going to see him. I don't know that he's going to be the next Cage Pringskorn, but he definitely will be somebody that we're going to be talking about.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this week. Next week, we will be back, same bat time, same bat channel. We will take a look at defense and the Larry's favorite people, the special teams unit, and we will talk about that too deep. Spring practice will actually technically be underway next week, but it'll be, I think that'll be their second. I think Tuesday is their second practice. They start on Sunday. So, four of the best co-hosts. We will see everybody next week.